Askreddit asks, when did your feeling about something is very wrong here turned out to be true?
I came home to my mum supposedly out for a walk and my little brother seeming worried she hadn't come back yet. I noticed her keys were hanging up. I had a sinking feeling something wasn't right. Why not take your keys? Anyway, long story short, she hasn't gone for a walk. She has locked herself in a back room in our guest house thing that you can only unlock from the inside, and had taken a whole heaps of pills to kill herself to survive. This was over 15 years ago. Still haunts us. She was dressed in her wedding dress. My parents had just divorced. It wasn't nice. Edit. Thanks guys for all the concern. I see my mama in 2 days for the first time in months, so it's fitting to be able to hug her. I told her I posted this and the flood of concerns about her, and she was very heartfelt and said she was sorry. I also told her I got gold and she doesn't understand, so now she thinks I am bringing her gold jewelry as a present back from my trip. I would also like to add one thing that she has said to me in the past is that she wishes she had reached out to someone before she did it. A chance for help, because she could have easily have died, and when it came down to it, when she was drifting to sleep, she didn't want to die anymore and just wanted to hug her kids. That's what she said. But it could have been too late. So learning from my mom's experience, please, if you feel like this, please, you have nothing to lose than asking for help. Even message me.
My dad did something like this while driving. Car load of family, zipping along as he was prone to doing. Then, just before a blind corner, slowed right down for no apparent reason. Slowed a lot more than necessary. A second or two later another car comes around the corner on our side of the road. Would have been a head-on had Dad not felt the uncanny urge to ease up.
I had the same thing happen. I slowed down coming up to a parking lot for Wawa, and then inches in front of me this truck just zooms past me, making me jam the brakes. If I hadn't slowed down, he would have hit the passenger side of the car where my dad was sitting.
Finally, I can tell this story. I'll never forget it. I was with a large group of friends including my brother, and we were playing manhunt outside at night. For those who don't know, manhunt is just like hide and seek, but it's outside and is a little more complicated. My brother and his friend decide to go into a snowmobile trailer to hide. And I told them all hide under the trailer. Little did I know, the trailer was balancing on 2 wheels. As I was under the trailer, I suddenly got the worst feeling that I needed to get out of there. I can't even describe the feeling, but I got out quick. Seconds after I got up, they made the trailer unbalanced by getting inside, and it crashed exactly where I just was. There's no doubt it would have killed me in seconds. I stood there in complete shock. I couldn't believe I was so close to death. Edit. Not that it really matters. URL redacted. WP content uploads 2018-08 TC128BLACK_web. JPG. What the trailer looked like. I was behind the 2 wheels. It was very dark out, so I wasn't aware it was balancing on 2 wheels.
I was letting my dog back inside. She walked right past me with no tail wagging or happy smile. Walked right through the kitchen without wanting a treat, and went straight to a doggy bed. I knew something wasn't right. And within 10 minutes we were in the car to the emergency vet. She had a tumor rupture apparently. It was clear what needed to be done. Still breaks my heart.
Came home very late one night. My parents and sister were already asleep. House felt funny. Dogs were barking in a strange way. Looked around and noticed that my stepmother's car was not in the driveway, but her purse was in the kitchen. My dad's wallet was not on its usual place. Caught someone creeping around in the backyard. The commotion woke everyone up. Creeper was one of my sister's friends. Turns out, her friends decided to break in due to the fact that my parents never locked the doors and the dogs all knew them. Steal my dad's cash and credit cards and take my stepmother's car for a joyride. Since she drove a Toyota Corolla, I have no idea why. We found the car in the next subdivision. Why Creeper Boy was not with his buddies. He was figured he could double back and spend some quality time with my sister. And my timing was just about perfect. He ended up rolling on his buddies and getting a reduced sentence. His parents were pissed at me more for injuring their little boy than they were at him for breaking into people's houses and stealing cars.
Not creepy or crimey or anything. But I'll never forget it. Christmas 2002. I was home from my freshman year of college. The vibe in the house had been really strange and tense since I got back. On Christmas morning, my mum gives my dad a really heartfelt, personalized present. My dad gives my mum an expensive but generic-looking bracelet with some diamonds in it. She starts openly weeping. Something was not right. He told us he was leaving the next day and moved out immediately. Into the house of the coworker he had been sleeping with. It was not a good time. Edit. Really did not expect all the upvotes on this one. So, to answer the multiple questions. We're all 5 by 5. My mum spent a long time very depressed and not sure what to do with her life. I was angry for a long time. My younger siblings were angrier for longer. Mum is doing great on her own now and dad is happily married to said coworker. Way happier than he ever was with my mum. Still some lasting bad feelings. But we're all pretty good.
I was driving home late one evening, and I had the strongest feeling that something was wrong. At the time, this meant that I took the long way home because I thought my subconscious knew there'd be some speed traps on the turnpike. Next morning, it turns out a drunk driver caused a huge multi-car accident in the exact stretch of road I would have been driving on. Driver and 2 others were killed, and another 5+ people were injured. I'm not a superstitious person by any stretch. But this is always something that's made me wonder.
I'm not superstitious, but I'm a little stitious.
My buddy used to stupidly sell various narcotics to just about anybody he met. I was with him once and he was giving me a ride. But he asked if we could make a detour for him to make a quick sell. I said sure, so we went to meet some random guy in the middle of a casino parking lot. We sat there for an hour waiting for the guy to show up. I was getting impatient and at the same time starting to get an uneasy feeling. Then the guy shows up, and the feeling got even worse. The guy was obviously an undercover cop, and I could tell off the bat. Right when I was about to tell my friend we needed to get out of there, the undercover drops the act and pulls out his gun, along with the SWAT team that surrounded us. I was 18 years old at the time and they were making jokes about straight out of high school to the pen. Luckily, I was released when they realized I was just along for the ride and was not a drug dealer myself. My buddy though, never heard from him again. I'm assuming he did some time.
I'm surprised you didn't get in any trouble like accessory.
My wife and I were renting for a few years when we decided to take the steps to buy our own house. We had enough for a deposit and had a mortgage quote arranged. We went to look at a number of houses and found one that we really liked, so decided to put our offer in. We were told that this was most likely going to be accepted, but they were going to wait a couple of days before deciding. That evening I sat in bed reading when I had a horrible feeling that something wasn't right. The next day I told my wife that I wasn't sure about it and convinced her that we needed to retract our offer. So we did. The next 2 weeks were a nightmare. Within 2 days of pulling out of this offer, my wife was made redundant, totally by surprise, and she hadn't been working at the company long enough to get much of a payout. A week later our car broke down and was beyond repair, barring spending more than the car was worth. We really struggled for the next year or so and would never have been able to pay off a mortgage. We are in a much better place now, but we know that if I hadn't had that moment we would have been screwed.
One night while I was home alone I was feeling oddly anxious for a few hours. Like every sound I heard seemed suspicious. Later while I was trying to sleep I look out my window and see someone just standing on the sidewalk in front of our house. It's likely that he was there for a while. Just after I notice him he comes up to the door and starts knocking. Which freaks out my dog and makes him start barking. Which he normally doesn't do when people come to the door. So in a panic I start heading out of the back of the house while calling my parents. At first they don't really believe it's an issue, but I insist that it's not normal. They rush home and my dad confirms my suspicions that it was my sister's abusive ex-husband. So my dad takes care of things and sends him on his way. He has been harassing us for quite some time. But now he's homeless, so trying to get a restraining order has been a struggle. He likely wasn't planning anything violent. But it was definitely the first time I've sensed something being wrong. And it really freaked me out just how much I felt it that night.
Fuck.
Fuck is right. That shit was dark.
Is it weird that I didn't find it all that dark until they said she was in her wedding dress? That's the shit that gets houses haunted.
Weird answer. I know. But one day many years ago I was boiling the kettle to make tea and suddenly thought, what would I do if my kettle broke? I don't have a spare. Thing is, I was instantly freaked out because it felt like it wasn't my thought. That's all I know how to describe it. Such an anodyne thing to think, but it was like an external thought had been placed in my head from somewhere else. It made me really uncomfortable. Such a strange sensation. Several hours later when I was making tea again. As the kettle was boiling, a blue spark suddenly flew out the base and it died. I had to buy a new one the next day. Edit. Yes, I am British. I often drink my own blend of tea, which is a mixture of Assam and Earl Grey. I leave the water to cool slightly for a few minutes after boiling before I add it to the leaves. I would never put the milk in first.
This is a refreshing change, honestly, to all the death in this thread.
The highway that I take home from work had just been repaved and none of the lines were painted on yet. Except for the lines in between each lane, there were no lines painted for the shoulders yet. But plenty of space to pull over to the shoulder part of the highway without impeding traffic. On one particular day, there was a city truck parked in the shoulder. I got over to the left lane to give them plenty of space, but knew that the guy on the driver's side opened his door way too wide for being next to 70+ mph traffic and was walking way too close to that traffic. I immediately thought that that wouldn't end well. I get home, and as I'm watching the news an hour later, there was a crash on that highway. At that spot I passed, involving the driver of the city truck. Someone hit him. He was dead on the scene. They, I'm assuming his coworkers, friends, and family, put up a memorial of him at the exact spot that I passed him. To this day, I still get over to the left lane when I'm passing him. The lines for the shoulders were painted on the next day. Edit. This happened in Ohio a few months ago. Late summer I think, so we pass on the left. Which is why I gave him room by getting over to the left lane. Move over or slow down is a law here. I move over when possible. Slow down when moving over is not possible. I'd rather not be the cause of someone not going home to their family that night. I'm not sure what happened to the guy that hit him, but a quick search of his name revealed that no charges were in the works a few days after this happened. I think of the dude daily as I pass his memorial, and hope he didn't suffer too bad.
Over 20 years ago when I 17yo or so, two of my buddies came to pick me up to get the night started. I got into the back seat of a Geostorm. If you remember those, it was a tiny car made of plastic. As soon I sat down I had a feeling of impending doom rushing over me. I had never felt that feeling before and never felt it since. I immediately was asked to be let out with some excuse and said we would catch up later. I get out and feeling quickly fades, so I go on about day. About 2 hours later I catch up with my other friends and I am greeted to learn the two that came to pick me up earlier were involved in major car accident. Both were seriously hurt and in the hospital. This accident happened about 10 minutes after they tried to pick me up. They both survived. The car did not survive though, and it was struck in the passenger side rear right where I was sitting. I am pretty positive by seeing the damage done that I would not have survived.
Glad you're still alive and kicking. Oh.
If there was something wrong with the engine causing it to vibrate at a low frequency, you may have sensed it. Low frequency sound below your hearing threshold can cause goosebumps, a feeling of being watched, or other strange sensations.
Cool. Didn't know that. Edit. It's amazing to learn about something you never knew existed. I'm sure that this low frequency ramped up my anxiety without me even knowing it was happening. I'm guessing if an engine part was loose and vibrating that I could have created such a frequency.
My mom called me when I was out with a friend. She told me my brother didn't come home last night. She was very worried even though this is not the weirdest thing for a 21-year-old. I went straight home. We both felt like something bad had happened. At home, his phone was on the couch in the living room so we couldn't contact him. Called the police etc. A week of investigation later his body was found. He had drowned himself in a nearby lake. Miss him every day for almost 3 years now.
That's horrible. I'm sorry you lost your brother.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to support the channel, and above all, have an excellent day you wonderful people.